and go ahead and get started with today's topic, which again is just some. Uh, the topic for today is some considerations for fall gardening, and this is really going to be kind of a go through several different topics and different things that have come up or I've gotten questions about. But as we're getting into the fall, there are some things that we want to make sure that we're thinking about. And so I wanted to kind of put this together, just to kind of, put this in people's minds as we're getting into the later part of the summer and into the fall, some things that we can do to keep our gardens really active and pretty and productive. And I just want to start off for a second. Things have been a little stressful lately, and there is, people have a lot of pressures on them right now. And so, while certainly I enjoy gardening, I think that it's worth time just thinking about all of the benefits that we get out of the green spaces around us. Just the reduction in stress of spending some time out in the open air with the green plants and all the flowers. A lot of times we're spending more time indoors and we're spending a lot more times at our computer screens. And I've certainly found that going outdoors and spending some time in the garden really improves my ability to get back inside and focus and concentrate on the things that I need to work on. Not only that, we're going to maintain our physical health, get a little bit of exercise, get out there and breathe that fresh air. Of course, great to get out there with the family and with the kids as well. And of course, Thoreau is a wonderful source for understanding the value of green space. And just remember, a remedy we can never have enough of is a healthy dose of nature. Now, I've mentioned this before, and I think it's important enough to be worth talking about again. I think it's a really good idea to have a garden journal. So just a record of the things that have gone on in the garden, things that we've learned from previous years. We can take a look at things, see how things have grown, how different plants have performed in our landscape. We can remember exactly how much sun different areas of the landscape are getting. If we have plants that aren't performing, if they look like they're not healthy, if they look like maybe the area they're in isn't really suitable for them, then we can take note of that. Yeah, and we can also kind of keep in mind, one of the great things, one of the reasons I appreciate container gardens is that it allows me to continually move plants around. So, does a particular arrangement of plants look really good? Is it something that, kind of flowers at the time that I want it to? And having all of that written down is a great way to keep track of it, because I find that, from year to year or season to season, it's really difficult for me to kind of keep track of what I've done. So I can, look back at a garden journal and kind of get an idea of what I've done in the past and what's worked. And it also really helps me get some ideas for moving forward. And I have blatantly stolen this picture from the internet, but I think it's a really good example of keeping a garden journal. You don't have to be an artist. You can certainly just keep things in text or make little rough diagrams, and I think that works really well. Because we also want to make sure that we have a garden plan. We want to base that garden plan off of some observations that we've made throughout previous seasons in our landscape. And I'm not going to get into too much detail with this because our next meeting is going to be Mr. Ross Overstreet, specifically talking about garden plans and things like that. But I do just want to take a second to emphasize that having that plan and being able to kind of think forward and how we want to move plants through our landscape really allows us to make sure that we keep features appearing in our landscape over the course of the year and keep that interest there. Not only interest in terms of the flowers and the interesting foliage, but also our interest in going out and spending time in that garden. So we start off, we do want to make sure as we're getting into fall that we are getting started germinating seeds for our cool weather plants. We're starting those now, and a little bit back into July, but you can easily start seeds in trays that contain a soilless potting mix. My preference for that is a product called Core. It's spelled COIR. I'm never certain if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it's a coconut husk based material that I think works really well for seed germination. Um, just moisten that potting mix, put your seeds in over the into the potting mix, and then you can add just a little bit more of that potting mix over the top, and that just make sure you put those seeds at the depth that they're going to require. Mist it with a spray bottle. I like to use trays that you can put those flats into that you can fill with water, and they'll absorb water up from the bottom. Um, and during the spring, very frequently we're trying to make sure that we're keeping those warm enough in order to make sure that the temperature is high enough for the seeds to germinate. That does not tend to be a consideration as we're planting seeds this time of year. Normally, what we're trying to do is keep the temperature down, because above a certain temperature, the seeds don't germinate as well. Most seeds are going to germinate really well in that 65 to 75 degree range, but they'll germinate just fine in warmer weather. We do have to, because it's really hot out, we do have to be concerned with the seedlings just running out of moisture. That is really bad for seeds. If they run out of moisture when they're trying to germinate, they'll just shut down and not germinate. So you can just cover the top of that seed flat with a plastic wrap or other material that's going to hold that moisture in. You just want to make sure that you remove that once the plants have actually germinated, because you don't want that greenhouse effect in there when the plants are really small. Just to make sure you move them into a sunny area where they're going to be able to get all the sun they need. Very often problems what we run into with germinating seed is if we have them in an area that's too shady, they'll get really long and kind of flop over. It's really hard to transplant them and they may not survive. The other thing that very often tends to happen is we put them in an area where they're getting sun from one side, and the seedlings tend to lean over in one direction. So it's not a terrible idea to just rotate those seedling flats on a daily basis, just to kind of keep them from keep all the plants from leaning off to one side like that. Some special considerations as we're talking about summer and fall. It is really hot. You wouldn't believe it by the past week, but often we are dealing with dry weather, particularly as we get into August and September. And that can be really hard on germinating seeds and young seedlings. So, if you have an area where you can germinate them, where they're going to be in a little bit cooler conditions, that's going to be beneficial. I know that's not always possible. But the other thing you really want to pay attention to is making sure that they stay watered, because that damage that you see around the edge of the leaf is really a result of the plant just running out of water and not being able to take up water in the time that it's transpiring that water away from its leaves. That being said, there are a lot of plants that really favor this time of year and really favor being grown as we get into cooler weather. Of course, all of those cool season vegetables like carrots and broccoli and Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, are going to taste a lot better when they mature during cool weather than they are when they mature during the warmer weather. And of course, I'd invite you, if you go back to the other presentation that I've done on fall gardening, I talk a lot more there about all of the planting vegetables and suggest planting dates and all of that. just to keep in mind, all of those plants, really are going to perform better as we get into cool weather than what we would see if we tried to plant them when it was warm. Of course, we do need to worry about the plants bolting. This is a really common thing that we see in these cool season plants because sometimes our weather here in Mississippi can be a little bit unreliable. So, bolting also gets called running to seed occasionally, is when you get the premature production of flowering stems before the plant is ready to be harvested. This can be really frustrating, particularly with our plants where we're harvesting leaves, so cabbages and mustards and things like that, where what we really want are the leaves of that plant, because once that plant starts producing flowers, it really dedicates its energy to the production of flowers and away from vegetative growth, which is just going to make that harvest really unpleasant. A lot of times, once those flowers start to form, you might also get some other chemicals being produced by the plant that make them a little bit distasteful. And we'll see this again: lettuces, cabbages, turnips, radishes. Some of our herb plants like basil will also be fairly prone to bolting. Very often, what's happening is just the change in day length can trigger flowering. But another really important factor in bolting is if we have cool days followed by warm days, which happens fairly frequently, and this kind of provides the plant with a signal that tells it that spring has come, and so it starts to send up flowers at an inappropriate time. Some things that we can do in order to reduce problems with bolting is just anything we can do to reduce stress on the plant. So making sure that its nutrition is good, provide all the soil nutrients that it requires, make sure your watering is even, and that's going to help reduce stress on the plant and prevent bolting. It's another thing that we can do is there are some varieties of these plants that have been bred to be less prone to bolting, and selection of those varieties will definitely help out. For lettuces, kind of a trick for that is that you can regularly pick off those outer leaves. That prevents the plant from fully maturing. As we talked about when we talked about flowering, having that plant, not be able to be fully mature will help prevent the plant from bolting. Another thing that works really well, rather than sowing all of your seeds at once, just plant those seeds every couple of weeks. And that way we can kind of continue to harvest. And if we have one of our sets of plants decide to bolt on us, we can know we have those other plants coming. So another factor that we often run into as we're talking about the fall of the year, and I've mentioned this a little bit already, is heat stress. Plants really need to take up a lot of water to provide evaporative cooling. So as water is moving through the plant and as it evaporates from the surface of the leaf, it takes a little bit of heat with it, cools down that plant. And there are different plant responses to heat stress. One of the ones that I frequently get calls about is on tomatoes. Less commonly, I get calls about other plants, but occasionally when the temperatures are really high, tomatoes will roll their leaves. What that does is kind of reduce the leaf surface area. They lose a little bit less water that way. Uh, other plants, sometimes you'll see them wilt and recover later when it might get cloudy or when we get into the later part of the day. However, not all plants are really able to compensate for the high temperatures by doing that. And so what happens is plant takes up as much water as it can, but the water just isn't able to get out to the edges of the leaves. And so you see leaf scorching around the outside of the kind of the border of the leaf or the margin of the leaf. You can see a picture of that up there on the top there. And generally, the last part of the leaf that's going to be affected are the veins, because that's where the water transport part of the plant is in that leaf. So we really want to make sure that we're providing enough water for those plants. Something I didn't note in the slide, but it's really important, is be conscious of whether the plant is adapted to sun or shade. Certainly, plants that are adapted to shade that are out in the full sun are going to have a little bit more trouble with this. And another part of that is selecting plants that are really going to be suitable for our climactic zone. So oftentimes we think about winter hardiness when we think about climactic zone, but another element of that is whether those plants can stand the heat here. It is a good time to be thinking about getting mulch back down on our garden beds, and this does actually tie into the issue of temperature, because having a good organic mulch layer will help with moderation of soil temperatures, kind of keep those soil temperatures down a little bit, and help those plants in their water use. It'll hold a little bit of water down, keep it from evaporating away, and just kind of even out the amount of water that the plant's able to get. So by having those good mulched beds, we reduce a lot of the stresses that the plants may otherwise be under. Of course, when we're cleaning out old mulch, it's also a good idea to take care of that garden sanitation task that I always mention when we talk about plant disease, and remove any plants or any plant residue that may harbor insects or disease. If you have old plants or anything like that, if you have residue of those plants, down at the base of the new plants, that can serve as a host that will allow that disease to spread into the plants we're putting in for the fall. Now, I do always have to talk about soil testing, and I'm not going to go into any real detail about this, but I know a lot of people, just from experience, I get a lot more soil tests in March than I get at any other time of the year. And I would really like to see a lot more soil testing done in the fall than what I normally see. And a big part of that is if we're thinking about what we're going to need in order to take care of our plants in our landscape. A big part of that is managing the pH of our soil. That's that measure of acidity or alkalinity that really is an important factor in whether plants can take up nutrients from the soil. And it takes time in order for lime to react. So in order for lime to create the pH change that we want to see, we really need to give that lime, a significant amount of time to work. So by soil testing in the fall, we can know really far ahead of time what we're going to need to do in order to adjust our soil. And so I think it's a good idea to get our soil tests done in the fall. If you get it in February, January, you're still doing good. And we'll certainly be happy to send it off in March. We'll send it off whenever you would like. But in terms of garden planning, I think soil testing ahead of time is a really good idea. Of course, moving on from and still talking about soil, as we get into the fall and we've cleared out, or we're starting to clear out those spring flower beds and spring vegetable gardens, this is a great time to get started on that compost bin. Um, there's a lot of available plant material. We can, get that together and get that composting. If we start now, we'll be looking at having finished compost as we're getting into the spring for next year, which will be really great. We can, get that into our garden soil, use it as a mulch for spring, and we can also use that as a component in improving the structure of our soils. If we may have sandy soils or clay soils, we'll make sure we have, adding back some of those micronutrients that the plants need. So really important and really useful if you have an area in your landscape when you can do that. And I will refer you back to, we did a presentation on composting that really kind of gives you some directions on how to get started with that. Of course, as we get into the fall, now that is when we get to do one of the things I get really excited about with gardening is being able to add new shrubs and new trees. And I know it's the last week of July now that when I'm giving this presentation. So we're still looking at a little bit of time off before we are ready to put those shrubs and trees in, which may not be until the end of October. But this is a great time to start thinking about what kinds of trees or shrubs you might want to add into your landscape, and do some research and do some looking for varieties that are going to suit the particular needs of your landscape. There's all sorts of different options out there. What varieties are going to have the chill hour requirements that are going to be suited to your area. What different flowers you might like. All sorts of different color options are out there. So now is just a really good time to start thinking about that. And once you come up with something, you can go early to your nursery person, whatever nursery or you might go to, and kind of give them some advanced lead and say, hey, I'm really looking for these specific varieties for this coming season, and that way you'll be able to get them in the time that you want them, and you'll be able to get those plants in the ground. Because we had that mild, relatively mild falls and relatively mild winters. Um, that plant that we establish in the fall is going to be able to really establish a really good root system. It's going to be putting that root system on as it gets cooler, so we can keep that water taken care of there. And then it's going to really get a stronghold, really come out swinging as we get into the spring. So it's going to be a lot less stressful for those trees. So just some general notes that I want to talk about as you're thinking about trees that you might be interested in for your home landscape. Just keep in mind, what function you're wanting that tree to have in your landscape. Are you looking for a nice shade tree, or are you looking for something that's going to be a specimen tree off by itself to really kind of stand out? Are you trying to screen an area in your landscape? Those different trees are going to be suitable for different uses, dependent on what we want to do with them. It is also, and I've provided this warning a number of times, so I get to once again use my favorite picture that I use of any presentation that I give. But choose a plant and know what its mature size is going to be. Um, know what its growth habit is going to be, so that it's going to be a plant that's going to fit your landscape. If you plant a tree that's going to overgrow the space that you put it in, it's going to be a big hassle to deal with, and certainly may not look the best. You may have something that looks like Pac-Man trying to eat the power lines, and we don't want that to be what we wind up with. So knowing those mature heights, and again having that time to kind of research what you're wanting to do, I think is a really good idea. Once we do get them in the ground, I mentioned water stress for plants, or for vegetables and things like that. Watering in those newly transplanted trees is going to be really important, particularly through their first growing season. Make sure that we're getting them enough water to really get established, so that by the time we get into the spring, they're really doing great. They have a good established root system, and as that first summer gets there that they're going to experience, they've got that strong root system to support them. Now, if you have any fruit trees in your landscape, and I certainly hope you do, as we get into the fall, it's a good idea to go ahead, clean up any fallen fruit from underneath the trees. That fallen fruit, oftentimes there may be fungi or other things on that fruit that can serve to, again, be that inoculum that can start off disease problems in the following year. It's also a good time, inspect the tree, make sure that it doesn't have any damage, doesn't have any cracked limbs. If you had fruit trees that were overloaded, sometimes you'll see the limbs breaking because of that. All sorts of other reasons why there might be damage. And now, or as we get into the fall, is going to be a good time to prune away any of those limbs, just to prevent that damage from causing potential problems later. If you have pecan trees, good idea to make sure we're mowing closely underneath those, because it's a lot easier to get the pecans that way if we do. Of course, we're also getting into the time of year when it's going to get into time to divide and transplant our perennials. So particularly as we get into October, we're going to want to do that. But even sooner than that, as we get into August, it's really time to start preparing those beds and getting ready for kind of a September planting of some of those spring flowering bulbs that we might want to put in. But as we divide and get in, kind of spread out any crowded perennials, we're going to have less transplant shock if we do that in the fall. They're just in cooler conditions. But our soil, you want to do it before it gets cold because the roots are going to grow better. When the soil is warm, they're going to be able to more easily reestablish themselves. Of course, we do want to still have color in our landscape as we go through the fall. It's, I want to see flowers year round. So, continuing as we're getting into August and September, we can continue to deadhead flowers in our landscape to promote those plants reblooming. And deadheading is just the removal of flowers from plants when they're fading or when they're dead. And that keeps the plants looking attractive because the spent flowers don't look great, but it also encourages the plant to put on more blooms. Uh, Additionally, if you have a plant that is a prolific reseeder and you don't want it to spread all over the place, deadheading those flowers is going to get rid of the source of that seed, so you don't have the potential for those plants to just kind of take over areas of your garden. So if you have a plant that has single flowers, things like coreopsis or echinacea, you can just remove the flower stalk for those. If you have a plant with clusters of flowers, things like verbena, it can be a little bit more of a challenge because the flowers don't all mature at exactly the same rate. You just kind of have to use your judgment to remove that cluster, and more of those clusters will come back. There are some plants that just produce flowers all over the place, things like petunias. And in those cases, you can just shear the entire plant, remove any of those faded flower heads, and you'll see them come back. Just keep in mind, you don't have to deadhead every plant. There are a lot of varieties of flowers that are sort of self-cleaning, and will continue to produce flowers without having to go to the effort. But it's a good idea to add some plants into your landscape that are going to give you color as we get through different times of the year. Of course, as we get into the fall and later, chrysanthemums or mums are a really great option. Gorgeous flowers really stand out in the landscape. Marigolds, which I normally integrate in with my vegetable garden, will flower through the spring or through the fall as well. All sorts of other plants, the camellias do great flowering in the fall. Dahlias are really gorgeous as well. Petunias do really well. One of my favorite flowers is a winter flower, and would be dianthus. As we get into January, we can still get flowers on our camellias. There's winter honeysuckle and winter jasmine, and flowering kints that can continue to produce flowers in our landscape. So that's sort of all part of that planning of the garden, is including plants that are going to flower at those different times. Now, as we get into fall gardening, of course, we do have to make sure that we're controlling insect problems. whether that be for our vegetable gardens or for our ornamental gardens, because insects go through several generations in many cases through a year. Even if their population is quite small when they start off in the spring, they have another generation, and then another generation. That population can grow very, very quickly and grow very large. So in the fall, we often do have a little bit more trouble uh, with insects, just because the populations tend to be greater, and so we need to really be mindful of the potential insect problems and be out there monitoring for those pests, so that we can control them just as they start to enter our landscape, rather than let them get out of hand. Another reason why we might have a lot of insect pest problems as we're getting into the fall is what we call the funnel effect. So, not everybody out there is going to be having a nice growing garden through the fall. The pest populations have built up, but as things start to kind of calm down in August, the food sources start to decline. So, that really nice, well watered, late season garden you're having, or those nice new blooming flowers, are going to be really attractive to those insect pests. So we want to make sure that we're doing a good job of controlling them. Kind of the same concept for disease, of course, not so much the funnel effect, but that the temperatures and the conditions that we have as we get into the fall can be really uh, appropriate or good for the development of disease. Favorable is the word I was looking for. And so we may find more disease, particularly right now. Right now, we've been getting an awful lot of rain, and we have very warm temperatures. And that combination of warm temperatures and a lot of water is going to make it a lot more problematic for for fungal diseases and for bacterial diseases, because those environmental conditions really favor the development of those diseases. Of course, the important thing there for disease is making use of those cultural controls. Sanitation is really important. Removing any potential disease-causing organisms, removing them out of plant debris, removing weeds from around your landscape because they can serve as a reservoir for disease as well. Using mulches, using resistant varieties, particularly for long-term landscape plants, is a really important step because you really want that plant to last a long time and look its best. Nothing we can do about all of the rain, but when we're not having that, making sure that we're evenly watering and watering down at the base of the plant, avoiding free water on the foliage is really important. And finally, just making sure we're not moving any diseased plants into the landscape is always a good idea. Make sure we buy them from a reputable dealer. Make sure that when we buy them at the nursery, we check them over really well to make sure we're not potentially introducing anything into the landscape. My final couple of notes for fall gardening, and I know I think I mentioned this previously in my other presentations about fall gardening, but I think it's important enough to mention it again. It is very hot outside, and heat-related illness is very real. I have experienced it myself, out in the sun for too long and passed out from it, and can be very, very serious. So make sure if you're working outside right now, you're drinking plenty of water. You're replacing the salt and the minerals that you need, so you're getting those electrolytes back into you. Wear appropriate clothing and sunscreen. And a quick note on wearing appropriate clothing. I see a lot of people outside gardening in tank tops or t-shirts with the sleeves all the way up to their shoulder, and I just do not consider that appropriate clothing. Despite the fact that it's really hot, I think it's a really good idea when you're gardening to wear a long sleeve shirt. Just wear a light color and a light type of cloth. and that's going to protect you from the sun and actually keep you cool. Schedule your outdoor activities in the morning and in the evening, where you're not out at the hottest time of the day. Pace yourself. If you start to feel like you're not not feeling well, you need to take a break and go stay cool indoors for a while. And particularly if you're out there, it's a good idea to make sure you have somebody who knows that you're out there, just in case something does happen. So be aware of the potential signs of heat exhaustion and heat stroke. You start to feel tired, which I understand. We're working in a garden, we might start feeling tired. But if you feel weakness or dizziness, if you start to develop a headache, or sweating really heavily, and particularly if you start to feel nauseous, that is the time to go and take a break and drink some water and cool down. If you stop sweating when you're out working, that is a really bad sign. If your pulse is really rapid, you start to feel confused, really time to get out there and even may possibly get some help. So I want everybody to stay healthy. So, be conscious of the fact that it can be really hot down here this time of year. I was out working in my landscape a weekend or so ago, trying to clear some weeds. And around 11:30, I had to stop and go inside. It just got too hot to tolerate being out there. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much, and I hope that you have enjoyed the presentation. I will be very happy to answer any questions that you might have, and or talk a little bit more.